I think we're good.
Are we?
Yep, we're
Excellent.
recording. This is on a thing, point that way. All right.
Very good, man, right on the dime.
Now, there's no other people in the call.
So that's okay, I mean, if people, I'll hit you up occasionally during the meeting and see if anyone's asking any questions, if there's someone online on the online meeting, you know. So, hopefully we're.
I think we're good.
Okay, very good. Kevin. There you go. Can we go just full screen? There we go. This one down here.
Yeah, you never know.
The full screen icon. Yeah, there we go.
Name of the game is right deal comes along.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you have to, if it's the right deal.
Yep.
This is Houston, probably like to downsize too, maybe. Probably to a beach somewhere. That's probably what she's after.
With warm weather?
Yeah, with warm weather, kinda like how Tom lives.
She likes the seasons more than, I would be the one to beach.
My wife likes the season too, as long as she just looks at them from in the house.
Oh, there's that too. Nice and comfy and cozy.
Have the fireplace going and, yep. I just love when it snows. I want to see you outside, Sean.
Yeah. Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
At least we're not like out east.
Wow.
Did you see that football game? Sunday night?
Yeah, I saw part of it, just a good showing.
You guys ready to go? Yeah.
Just like you, born ready.
All right. All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join us tonight for the third community listening session on the cooperative boundary plan that we've been working on for a good while now. All right, Kevin, I'll just give you the heads up when to advance the slides. If you can click to the next one. There we go. All right, real quickly, introductions. My name's Tom Rachkowski. I am representing the town of Waterford. I'm a planning commissioner on the town of Waterford Planning Commission and have been working with these gentlemen for the last 16, 17 months or so on this. So I'll have them introduce themselves as well.
My name is Adam Jaski. I am a trustee with the Village of Waterford.
I'm Dale Garkey, supervisor with the town of Waterford.
Doug Schwartz, supervisor with the town of Waterford.
Don Houston, village president from the village of Waterford.
All right. Can I see just a quick show of hands? Who is here for their first listening session for this particular work effort? Okay, great. All right, thank you. So our agenda for tonight, there we go, Kevin. We want to do a quick recap of the project, just so everyone is kind of grounded in all the work that has happened up to this point. And then the meat of the matter for this evening is to communicate what is in the cooperative boundary plan that this working group is recommending to both the village and town boards for a vote. I'm going to ask you to bear with us as we go through those terms. We are essentially trying to distill down a 19-page legal document into 3 slides with bullet points on it. So we'll do our best to kind of give you guys the gist of what's in the cooperative boundary plan and get you grounded in that. And then we're going to cover the benefits in terms of why are we doing this? At the end of the day, what is this all about and why are we doing this? This is information that we covered very early on at the beginning of this effort. We've covered it consistently throughout, but it's important that we continue to ensure that people understand why are we doing this. And then we'll cover the next steps. Where does this go from here? The work that the 5 of us have been doing on this is coming to conclusion, and this is now going to be handed off to the full boards for both the town and the village to vote. So we'll talk about those next steps, and then we want to hear from you. I'm going to ask if you could please hold your questions till we get to the Q&A portion of the agenda, and then we'll certainly give everyone the opportunity to ask whatever questions that you might have. As we have in past meetings, we have copies of the Cooperative Boundary Plan map here for your review. We had that back at the beginning of June when we drafted it, and we've got it here again. Before we get to the Q&A, anyone who wants to take a few minutes to stand up and take a look at the map and whatnot, we'll give you the opportunity to do that. All right, Kevin, you can go to the next slide. Okay, quick recap on where we've been. This work really started back in July of 2023. There was a joint meeting between the town and village boards, and they agreed at that meeting to pursue a cooperative boundary plan, which is an actual legal agreement chartered by the state of Wisconsin and orchestrated under state of Wisconsin processes and law, and ultimately is reviewed by the state of Wisconsin to ensure that whatever we come up with meets the state standards for cooperative boundary plans. These are things that are available online for anyone to look at. If you go out to the State Department of Administration website, you can see all the cooperative boundary plans that have been forged by communities across the state of Wisconsin over the last, I don't know how many years, but there's a lot of them out there. So the board's adopted resolutions to move forward with this work. One of the first things that happens as part of that work is they appoint a working group to actually do most all of the heavy lifting at negotiating this thing, putting it together, defining what's in it, etc. That's the 5 of us. And we've been working together since September of 2023. And I'll get to some of the details on that in just a minute. We've also been working with the Wisconsin State Department of Administration. There's a representative from that agency that's been working with us on this and guiding us through the process. You can see some of the other key things here from last year and early this year. The working group meetings. We held our first community listening session about a year ago, where we reviewed the very beginning of this thing, what it is, why we're doing it, how we go about it, the benefits, the state standards, the processes, and in the first several months, it's been a real learning process for us, and we covered, what were our key learnings at that point in time. In early 2024, we continued to meet, and one of our priorities at that time was interviewing and getting input from key stakeholders as part of this process. That included people like the village engineers, heads of DPW, the school superintendents, police force, and other key stakeholders who we got input from in terms of what we were doing and what they might want to offer as part of what we were doing. So that was a key part of the process. In summer, June this year, we had our second community listening session. We provided a progress update at that point in time. We summarized the input that we got from all of those key stakeholders as part of the process. We reviewed the draft terms in terms of where we were at that point in time. And we'll talk more about that. Again, like I said, that's the meat of the meeting tonight. And we shared the boundary map at that June community listening session for the first time, and we have continued to share it since then. Next slide, Kevin. All right, we continue to meet with Department of Administration. Again, this working group has been meeting consistently throughout this entire process. In the summer timeframe, we formally engaged legal counsel to begin taking what we had basically put together on paper and in PowerPoint slides and those kinds of things, and started formalizing the formal legal document that will be the cooperative boundary plan. One of the things that was critical as part of this work, in September, we held a meeting exclusively for the town of Waterford landowners who own property within the village growth area portion of this boundary plan. And we got their input. We answered questions at that meeting, and we felt it was very important to engage them as part of the process here. There are a total of 71 town of Waterford tax parcels that exist within the cooperative boundary plan's village growth area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That equates to 50 distinct landowners. We invited all those landowners to that meeting in September. About 22 of them showed up, and we had a very active discussion as part of that process. Again, we've been continuing to meet since the summertime frame, basically working through revisions and iterations of this cooperative boundary plan to bring us to where we are today. We've got the community listening session that we're holding tonight, and we're in the process of preparing the full set of materials that is ultimately going to be going to both the village board and the town board for a vote. Throughout this project, we have consistently updated the town supervisors and the village trustees at their monthly board meetings on the work that's been going on here and the progress that we've been making. This group of 5 of us has met more than 50 times, almost every week since September of last year, averaging 1 to 2 hours per meeting. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. We have been committed to open and transparent communication with the Waterford community at large. That's happened through these community listening sessions. It's happened through a special purpose email box that we've set up for the community to submit questions and get answers back from us. And we've tried to be as open and transparent throughout the process about this work. All right, next slide, Kevin, thank you. All right, so we're going to get into specifically what is in the boundary plan that is being recommended. Some of this is a recap of information that we shared back in June, but we've built out on it since that point in time. So this cooperative boundary plan is a 50-year plan. That is not unusual. These are long-term strategic plans that communities forge together to basically lay a foundation for strategic planning for their futures. So we are recommending a 50-year term on this plan. As part of that, one of the things that's been a very hot topic in this community for the last couple of years has been the Village of Waterford's extraterritorial zoning district and land division authority. That has been the source of some amount of angst for certain town property owners, and it's been kind of a lightning rod. This boundary plan addresses that. If adopted and put into place and approved, no village oversight authority on town lands outside of the village growth area boundaries that are depicted on the map. Another hot topic I think most of us may be aware of is the town's failed incorporation attempt from a few years back. As part of this cooperative boundary plan, the Town of Waterford Board will not support or assist any town incorporation initiatives going forward. That bears a little bit more explanation because there's been some new learnings that we've had about that particular point since we talked about this back in the summertime frame. We originally imagined that any town incorporation attempt or petition would originate from the town board, like it did last time. What we learned in the process is that may not be the only way that a town incorporation petition could happen. Any subset of the town could decide that it would want to incorporate. So you could have Michigan, you could have Golden Meadows, you could have Hickory Hollow, you could have any subset of the town decide it wants to incorporate. oversee that particular work. It weighs in on it, but it doesn't have a say in it. So we wanted to figure out how do we address that potential possibility. And what we have incorporated into this boundary plan is the fact that the town board will not support any attempt by any part of the town to incorporate. And if such an incorporation attempt were to happen and the state approved it, it would have to go to referendum. And the whole town would have to vote on that. If the referendum passed and that subset of the town actually incorporated, the village as part of that set of activity would actually assume the village growth area that we have depicted in the map, and those portions of the town would become part of the village if the referendum were to pass. So that's a little bit different than the way that we had understood it and described it earlier this year. The general thought is those are very remote possibilities, but they are possibilities that exist. So we wanted to address them as part of this agreement. All right, the municipal boundary map for the town and village of Waterford is available on the table over here. It's also incorporated into the slides, which I will be able to share with anybody who wants them after this meeting. This boundary map depicts the broadest possible village territory over the next 50 years. Any town lands that do not annex into the village within that 50-year period are going to remain in the town. And town lands outside of that village growth area cannot annex into the village within that 50-year period. That's the essence of the boundary map that we're recommending going forward. So the village growth area that's depicted on that map, virtually nothing is happening on day one if this cooperative boundary plan is adopted. No town properties, in terms of landowner properties, are automatically, joining the village. That's not happening. That has to happen through the landowner requesting annexation into the village, or the landowner requesting for extension and the village agreeing to extension of its water and sewer utility, or if any of those town lands in the village growth area go under redevelopment. And there is the potential for town islands to occur over time. If a town island were to be created by properties surrounding a given property annexing into the village, a town island landowner would have a 7-year grace period by which to annex into the village. It would not be something that they would have to do immediately. They would have 7 years to do it, or if the property of that title is transferred to someone else, then it would join the village at that point in time. So those are the scenarios for any properties within that village growth area joining the village. I'll stop there. Anything that any of you guys have to add or want to add to anything we've said so far?
I do, without having it in front of me, there is, when this is all public to see and all the exhibits are public, there is one property that will go in to the town on day one. And
Right.
that we came across, there is a property, I don't have the address off the top of my head, that half is in the village, half is in the town, and they receive a property tax bill from both. So they will be going into the town on day one to clean up that.
Right, so there's a lot of talk about properties from the town coming into the village. There is actually a property from the village that's moving into the town as part of this work. That's what Adam's referring to.
Yeah, it's just a cleanup of boundaries and.
It's actually
property
up
taxes.
on Mountain Lane, and it's part of the property, it's really a mess, it's serviced by the town sewer utilities, and part of it's in the village. It should have never happened the way it did, so the person's property should all be in one or the other, and it makes more sense for it to be in the town.
All right, next slide, Kevin. All right, property tax revenue sharing. This is pretty much what we shared back in June when we had this defined. The town of Waterford would receive property tax on any annexed parcel for 10 years after that annexation were to occur. So that shared revenues would be based on current town assessed property value at the time of the annexation. Not today, not when. So the cooperative boundary plan could be adopted and approved, in the first quarter of next year. Some property might not annex into the village for 25 years, 30 years after that. And the assessed value of the property at that time of annexation is what would be used to calculate the revenue sharing, not the current one. Shared revenue would be calculated using the town's then current mill rate in each year of the 10-year revenue sharing term. So those are very generous terms. They actually exceed the terms required by state law in terms of revenue sharing of this nature. There's also something called a agricultural land conversion charge for any agricultural land that would be annexed in to the village. There is basically a charge that the property owner pays at the time of that annexation. And that the proceeds from any such charge would be split evenly between the village and the town. So that's another element that the village would not have to agree to that, but the village is agreeing to that as part of this proposed plan. All right.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you saving all questions
Yes.
for after?
We are. We're gonna have a specific Q&A portion
Okay.
At the end of the meeting.
I just didn't know if I could interrupt and ask on
No,
a
I
line item.
appreciate the question, thank you. All right, from the standpoint of shared services, throughout this agreement, there is a focus on optimizing services, expenditures, and efficiencies between the town and the village. So there is an agreement, the agreement would be to pursue governmental efficiencies through continued and increased sharing of services and capital expenditures. The municipalities would agree to notify one another and work together on contracts for common services and common capital expenditures. So this would include anything from big to small. It could be equipment, could be things like road salt, it could be a variety of things that both municipalities need, and they could drive a better deal on those things working together as opposed to working separately. They also would agree to proactively provide each other the opportunity to bid on any municipal services that the other municipality provides. So again, an opportunity for greater efficiency, the ability to streamline, to eliminate duplication and wasteful spend on the part of either municipality. So that's also part of what we've got in this agreement. Anything you guys want to add on any of those?
I think you pretty well covered it.
Okay. All right, Kevin, next slide. All right. Village of Waterford Water and Sewer Utility. Any town landowner that would annex into the village has some options. They can remain on their existing water and sewer infrastructure if they want to, if it's working for them, and that's perfectly fine. Or they can petition the village for extension of village sewer and water service to their property. The village has the option to either grant that or deny that based on the logistics and other considerations. But town landowners that choose to annex into the village have the option with respect to water and sewer. Road futures. Today, there are some confusing and kind of ambiguous road boundaries, and we're clarifying identifying those as part of this plan. Things like Winnet Park Road, Highway 36 corridor. These are areas where the municipal boundaries run right down the center lines of roads, causing confusion and issues with respect to serviceability and other things, maintenance, upkeep, those kinds of things. So we're cleaning up some of those road boundary issues as part of this. If the town reconstructs a road that lies within the village growth area, the village is permitted to lay and fund water and sewer infrastructure at that time. So this provides the village some options with respect to its water and sewer utility within that village growth area. All future road construction will be done to current engineering standards at the time of that construction. Again, I mentioned no municipal boundaries down the center lines of roads. And all town roads within the village growth area are going to be maintained at or above a PASER rating of 4, which is basically, Jim, you can probably explain this better than I can, but it's basically a rating system for how well roads are maintained and kept up. And 4 is not like pristine, it's serviceable.
It's considered poor, is the actual rating out of 10.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, fire service boundaries are gonna remain the same as current municipal boundaries. If future annexations occur, fire service boundaries change accordingly. Kevin, next slide. All right. The last key element as part of this plan is that it is going to establish an ongoing joint strategic planning committee between the village and the town. That is going to include representatives from both the town and village of Waterford. Those committee members will be appointed by the town chair and the village president. There will be a requirement that that group is going to meet at least twice a year, potentially more often based on priorities and projects that it takes on. The accountabilities of this group are essentially ongoing oversight of this cooperative boundary agreement. Collaborative strategic planning on matters impacting and beneficial to the greater Waterford area. This is looking beyond just the town or the village. This is looking at Waterford overall and what's in the best interest of Waterford overall. It's going to be responsible for developing ideas that enhance Waterford's quality of life, optimizing services, reducing costs, and maximizing efficiencies, and making those recommendations to both the village board and the town board. Developing joint proposals and recommendations. And proactive, transparent, constructive communication within both of those leadership structures as well as with the community at large. All right, that is the essence of what is in the plan that we are recommending to the boards. Anything that you guys have to add to what we've covered so far?
I think that's pretty thorough.
All right, so what's the bottom line? Like, why are we doing this? Why are these communities doing this? There are a lot of reasons. We try to summarize them here. Number one, it eliminates current conflicts between the town and village of Waterford. Conflicts that go back a lot of years, that still wrangle a lot of people with respect to things like extraterritorial zoning and incorporation and things like that. This takes care of that. It significantly reduces the potential for future conflicts between these municipalities. It provides a clear, strategic foundation for planning that both of those municipalities can use in planning their futures. This is foundational to future municipal planning. It secures and preserves over 98% of the town's tax base for the next 50 years. It secures and preserves over 94% of the town's territory in terms of acreage for the next 50 years. It provides the village with critical clarity and focus for planning its future growth. The village has focus, or would have focus, in planning its future growth if this plan is adopted. It establishes a clear, proactive, preemptive, and planned strategy for addressing inevitable municipal boundary decisions over the next 50 years. One of the big issues that both of these leadership teams have is the fact that they're always reacting to stuff. Situations pop up, things happen, and it's reaction. This plan eliminates a lot of that reaction. It sets the strategy going forward. It also provides a durable strategic plan that is going to apply in the future regardless of changes in municipal leadership personnel, plans, priorities, and personalities. So the people that are on these boards today are putting this in place. You don't know who's going to be on these boards 20 years from now, 30 years from now, into the future. This plan holds regardless. Next slide, Kevin.
That's the next one, right?
That's not the next one.
Oh, okay.
There we go. All right. Additional benefits. It saves time and efforts and avoids countless future hours spent reacting to situations. Again, the amount of time that these leaders spend reacting to stuff that wasn't seen coming is significant. This proactively addresses that. And in the process, it frees up that leadership time to develop and execute strategic initiatives designed to enhance the quality of life for the greater Waterford community. Change the focus from reacting to situations to planning the future and laying a vision in place for the future and not reacting to stuff. Saves money by avoiding legal services and potential litigation in reacting to situational boundary-related matters. Improves revenue sharing outcomes for the town beyond what's required by Wisconsin state law. Provides greater control over any potential future dispute resolution process. There is a dispute resolution process that is defined within this plan that is defined in accordance to state standards. And it resolves conflicts in a more creative way than is probably possible if left up to a judge or jury. If things go bad, usually no one is happy in the end. This is designed to mitigate those risks. It provides a formal written contract that's enforceable and defended by the state of Wisconsin. And bottom line, at the end of the day, it contributes to a climate of cooperation, collaboration, and goodwill between the village and the town, providing positive momentum, a framework, and a catalyst for planning Waterford's future in a constructive way. That's the bottom line of why this plan is being recommended. That's what it's intended to accomplish. All right, Kevin, next slide. All right, this is a copy of the potential, the Village of Waterford Potential Growth Map. We shared this back in June. There are copies up on the table here. Anyone who has not had a chance to look at this in any amount of detail, I will pause for a little bit if you want to come up and take a look at the map or take a look at it up on the slide. We'll give a couple minutes. And then I have just one more slide after this, and then we will open it up for your questions.
I don't have.
That's different.
Oh, that's this one? You don't want me back, that's.
You can look at it, but.
Oh, okay, I thought we had.
No, they're not handouts.
Okay.
But anyone who wants these slides can have these slides, and you're welcome to it.
The small ones are the road cleanups that deflects some of the boundaries that are in the middle of the roads and that we were gonna clean up day one, which really doesn't, there's no parcels with that, just moving the lines as far as the road boundaries.
All right, if you guys are good with that, I'll finish up and then we'll turn it over to you for Q&A. Okay, so next slide, Kevin, if you could. Thank you. This is the last slide. So next steps, where do we go from here? Like we said, we've been at this for 16, 17, 18 months. It's been a good long while. We're coming down the home stretch for the moment of truth in terms of what happens to this. It needs to be reviewed by town legal counsel. That is starting up now. Ultimately, there is a vote by both the village board and the town board on whether or not they would approve it. They both have to approve it. If they don't both approve it, it's done. If they both approve it, it goes to the Wisconsin Department of Administration for review and their input. They're gonna hold it up against their standards for what they look for in these kinds of agreements. We've tried to stay true, knowing what those standards are. We've tried to stay true so that we feel confident that if it gets that far, that it will pass those standards, but we're not 100% sure. There is the possibility for some additional iteration or revision based on feedback that the state might have. At the end of the day, if the state gets to the point where they're saying it meets approval and all, then it will hold a public hearing on this for the Waterford community, for any additional input the community might have on this plan. There could potentially be some final board votes if any of the terms change based on state input. We don't think that that's probable, but it's possible. And if the state reviews it, approves it, and it's put into place. We are shooting for those board votes to happen here before the end of the year. That's been our goal, the goal of this group, for at least the last year, is to get this to the point where it's either going to the state or it's dying by the end of this year. That's the plan. All right, so with that, we'll open it up for questions. Right?
So, the way I understand state statute is, you know, you guys, any municipality that incorporates sewer and water in front of a resident, they're required by law to hook up to that sewer and water. Now, you guys are telling me that you're gonna not allow, or give us the option of going either way on that. Is that something that you guys would be willing to provide in writing? Because
It's all,
Yeah.
it's private.
it is state law,
So it's in the legal document that we're moving.
Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt again. His voice, you can hear him. I can't hear the question, I'm hearing your answer, but do
Okay.
we have like a walking mic or something?
I don't think we have one in.
Okay, then if you would, please, just repeat the question.
So the question
and-
is, you know, if your municipality incorporates sewer and water, by state law, any resident is required to hook up to that sewer and water. Okay, I'm asking if these municipalities are willing to put that in writing, that we aren't required, that we have the option to hook up to sewer and water.
I'll answer that. It is in this agreement, and this agreement goes to the state. If they approve it, it is, that's the rule.
Can I just extend on that, because I thought I was reading two different things on your recap of what it says in that document. It said if you choose to annex, then you can choose the sewer or not. But then I thought the slide before that had indicated that you had to annex and actually do the sewage, but you were given 7 years to do it.
No, those are two different things.
Okay, so then can you clarify that? Cause I don't have that document. Are we able to see that document?
Not
Cause you
yet,
indicate you're being transparent,
yes.
but we don't really know what's in there.
Well,
Why can't we get a copy of that?
it's still going through legal review by attorneys. So
What
that's,
about my attorney?
well, I mean, at the point that this goes to the boards, that document will be available.
And at what point is that?
We're shooting for before the end of this year.
Okay, so I'm sorry, could you clarify what the difference was between those two things?
Yeah, so anyone who annexes into the village, chooses to annex in, or would have to annex in by the creation of a town island and the 7-year grace period that they're given expires, has the option to hook up to sewer and water or not. It's their option. They can stay on the infrastructure that they have or not. Mr. Sossaman is questioning that based on state law that he understands. We have gotten input from the state on this question in our conversations with the Department of Administration. They have indicated that what we're proposing here would be acceptable to them. Ultimately, when it comes under their review, we're gonna know or not, but we were proceeding along based on the guidance that we've gotten from the state.
Thank you, and I just, I'm not gonna lie, I got lots of questions. You talk about all the benefits of doing this. What are the cons for the town landowners, such as, you know, right now, we have access to firearms and shooting on our own property and fireworks and livestock. Village does not, is my understanding. So I see those as cons as being a town owner. So you're not actually setting forth a pro-con list for us. Why should we only listen to the benefits and not the repercussions?
I think it's a fair question.
I mean, if you choose to stay in the town, you can remain having all those things you just listed.
So
But
even
that
if
doesn't
I'm in
change.
if I'm in that area that you're trying to incorporate, you're telling me I am free to say, no, I'm not joining, but then what happens?
You're free to not join. You don't have to join.
There's no ramifications for saying that.
No.
Only if for some reason you would become a town island, and when we looked at, there was very few places that would be town islands.
And if you became a town island, you still have 7 years after that to be in the village, so.
And there is no one's incorporating anything. I think that sometimes is what people think is happening. This is just a potential growth map. Nobody in that map has to come into the village at all. Nobody is being forced to do that unless they choose to do that.
Some of these farmlands could farm for the next 150 years, and stay just like it is. Or they could choose to redevelop and have the opportunity to have sewer and water, and basically get a whole lot more for their property. But that's their choice. It's the choice of the property owner. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything.
And to Mike's point, we had a long conversation with the DOA about the water and sewer issue. And we made it well known to them that we wanted the owner that was potentially coming in to be the one in charge of their water and their sewer. And nobody else. And they, as Tom said, the guidance from the state, and we had meetings with them, said that if this committee approved it and the boards approved it, they saw no reason why they would go against that. And that would be the law for these two communities for the next 50 years regarding water and sewer.
Ed?
Kind of following this young lady's question relative to in or out, village versus town, you mentioned 2 examples of owners that you had to clean up the lines, somewhere in the village, somewhere in the town, or half and half. And one, I think if I heard you correctly, chose to go into the village. the other moved the boundary into the town. So, relative to pros and cons, why did they do that? Why did one do this, one did the other?
We didn't have anybody that moved into the village.
Yeah,
We
there's
had the one on Mountain Lane.
No, Tom brought up two cases, they said we're cleaning up the boundaries, the
Yes.
lines, right?
Yes.
One, because they were both, village and town, or it looked like it, whatever. And so they decided one would go to be totally in the village, and the other one was decided, I'll go to the town. When you redraw the lines, you recall saying that?
No, I don't think that's what we were talking about, Ed. I mean, Don was mentioning the property on Mountain Lane,
Right,
that.
went to the town.
Right.
Where was the other one that decided to be fully in the village?
There wasn't.
The boundary line.
There wasn't one?
Understanding.
No,
Yeah.
the-
Oh, I thought you said there was two
The only
cases.
So
thing
the only
was-
stuff that's moving into the village or would move into the village, Ed, is cleaning up those road boundaries where there's a municipal boundary running down the middle of the road. And this
Okay.
is specifically on Highway 36, where the municipal boundary runs right down the middle of the highway, and we're moving that across, so
Okay.
that would move as part of this, if this is approved.
And these road changes don't change any responsibilities or put more of a burden on either the village or the town, because most of them are either state highways or county highways. So there's really not the state or the county pays for those roads anyway. So it's not like the village would be responsible for fixing more roads or the town. It's,
So hypothetically speaking, you're right in the middle of Buena Park Road, and just cause I saw that's one of the extensions, right? And your neighbors on both sides decide to annex into the village, and you're stuck in the middle. Does that, I mean, this may sound like a dumb question, but does that affect who picks up your garbage? Does it affect where you can go? Does it affect who can actually go to the dump that's right down the road? I mean, any of that change?
No. No, that doesn't change.
Because that's, alright, so you're adding then the town dump, right? Into the village then?
No.
Town dump's gonna stay in the town.
So then if you annexed into the village, you would no longer be able to use that?
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
The village has
we've got,
dumpsters there.
yeah, a couple times a year that they do couch pickup and all that stuff. It's just a different type of program.
So doesn't all this fall under pros and cons, and the cons are kinda, non-transparent? I'd like to see a list of, pros and cons, there's pros and cons to everything. So I'd like to see the other side of things.
Well, I think it'd be very difficult to put together a pro and con list. I think the pros and cons would be different for every property owner.
Well, here's a con right here with the garbage, or the dump, right? I look at that as a con, if I went into the village. I'd like to use the dump. So, how
But again, I
how
think the
trivial that
pluses
is
and
or
minuses
whatever,
for each
but,
property owner is totally different.
And that's understandable, but what you're doing here when you're giving this, which I appreciate, you're giving benefits, but you're not really willing to express what possible cons there are. So you're not really giving a full pro and con, and you're trying to, apparently, what it appears is you're trying to persuade people to go one way because you're not being completely transparent by saying, but, I'm just gonna use the garbage for example. You're gonna annex into the village and it may help with finances in the future and legal fees, although they're significant, I don't know what significant is. I don't know how many actually hours are spent on things that are frivolous, money that's maybe spent on frivolous things, but it is going to affect whether I can go to the dump or not. Maybe that's not a con for me, maybe it is a pro for me and I don't really, maybe I just don't care, but someone else might. And so, to be fair and do due diligence, it would be nice to see these are benefits and these are possible cons, right? These are the things that you will lose as a town resident to annex into the village. And then you can take it with what you want if it's a pro or a con.
I think you're missing the point. There's no lands that are being forced. No, there's nothing gonna be changed. It is up to the landowner to decide if they wanna annex in the future, or tomorrow, or next year, or 20 years, or 30 years, or not at all. It's up to the landowner. It's the choice of the landowner. It is not, at that time, they can look at the pros and cons and say, well, do I like using the dump or whatever? Is it worth that to me? Is it worth me putting a new sewer system in? Or should I hook up to the village sewer and annex in? Or should I, cut up my land and sell it off in different parts? Or do I like it the way it is? That's gonna be, as Troy said, it's gonna be your choice at the time and the situation you're in and what you wanna do with your land. And everybody can make that decision at that time.
I think you're missing the point, which is,
Okay.
you're trying to say that we're being transparent and open, but you're not actually giving us all of the answers. And you're not letting us review what you're saying, and I understand you're saying it's an illegal process, but you're just expecting us to rely on what you're saying as true and accurate. That's just poor judgment.
And if nothing changes, why
Why-
are we here?
Basically, to have an agreement. Theoretically, let's say interest rates drop to 1% and building goes nuts. They could just keep annexing all the way up to the county line. Right now, these lines are drawn, that's where it stops. The town can plan because they know these lands are gonna stay in the town for the next 50 years. Or these lands are possibly gonna come out. But like you said, it's a very small percentage of the town. And there again, they might not come out. 50 years, there wasn't a lot that got annexed into the village from the town in the last 50 years. Yes, we just had the graves that the town lost.
I think for me to answer your question, and one of the reasons I even ran for one of these seats was, I think people want these two communities' leaders to actually try to do something to work together. And maybe this is small potatoes on the stove in the big picture, but it's actually something where 5 people from 2 different municipalities got together and are trying to do something for the better overall picture. I understand everything you're saying about the cons. I think Troy is right a little bit in the way we don't know what some of the cons may be. We just don't know. This is a great step forward in the relations of the communities. I feel, I could be totally wrong. I married into somebody who's lived here her whole life, and there's a lot of belief that you can't change that mentality. But I'm trying my damnedest to show that we can be one community. And I think if you paid attention to this process, even just tonight, there's a common theme in a lot of this that says the greater Waterford area. The 5 of us, I think, kind of came to the point of not using the town of Waterford and the village of Waterford until we had to legally, and use the greater Waterford area. In full transparency, maybe I'll catch hell for saying this, maybe I won't, I don't care. We were lobbied by a lot of people to get serious about actually consolidating and becoming the city of Waterford.
The town goes away, the village goes away, we create the city of Waterford.
Lots of problems go away.
And
We wouldn't be talking if this
Well,
was a city.
in all seriousness, we were lobbied by a lot of people, and as this process went on, that was something that was actually louder than anything else. Was if you're spending this time and doing all this, become the city. We get rid of all of some of the issues that are just there. Yes, there's major growing pains. But I think what we're seeing from a lot of people is they're tired of the bullshit in the town, they're tired of the bullshit in the village. Let's just try to figure something out and be one. Now, does that happen? Obviously, you don't see that before you tonight. So, we have talked about everything. We've looked at everything. I'm with you on the cons. There's stuff sometimes that crosses my mind after this, and I'm like, well, that could be an issue for somebody, or somebody might not want that. But this is what we feel is the best possible thing we could agree to for the majority for both communities. I know that's probably not what you want to hear.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just, the only thing I'm looking at it from is, again, I understand what you're trying to do, I can appreciate that, but we are, and I guess, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you guys vote on it, or, well, the town and village boards vote on it, right? And regardless, it's gonna happen whatever you want.
There's also
But-
a public hearing.
Which we've already indicated usually doesn't make much of a difference. But my point is it's, if we get to decide anyways, right, that's what you're saying, that's the whole point, we get to decide what we want to do, then we should, I mean, that's something important to know, because then we get time to think about that. We don't need 5 years or 7 years, because the answers are in front of us. So if you're asking us, let's assume it goes through, great, fine. How do I know if I wanna annex in or not? Because I don't know any of the actual, I'm just gonna say pro-con list, right? Because that's, I'm saying that with the fact that there's benefits listed, right? What are the potential situations and changes that may occur if you annex? Whether it's a pro or con, it is gonna be individualized, I understand that,
You're
but
absolutely right.
there's not a list.
Okay, like an example I think I heard was, let's talk about the DeGray property, the most recent annexation by Trailside. I think that's an example of, there are people, there are families, there are property owners that have had that for a long time, and the vision changes over time. The children were not interested in continuing to use that land how it was. So the option to hook into the sewer and water got them a whole nother number on that check at closing. Is that my choice? That's not for me to say. So I do not know personally what your property is, but maybe there's a situation that benefits you down the road. I don't know where your children, grandchildren, I have no idea. Or another reason, like you said about the dump. You know, if somebody feels they might want to annex into the village, but the dump is the big thing holding it back, they can stay in the town and use the town dump. It's difficult to try to work through all the pros and the cons from our standpoint, because I don't know what some of them are. Living in the village, my visions and concerns might be very different than yours. So I don't know, and I just want to say one more thing and then I'll shut up, is about the legal document. We will provide everybody that wants the copy of the final agreement once it gets through both legal processes. We did not want to do that ahead of the game in case it changed. And it very well could change based on the town board wanting something adjusted, the village board wanting something adjusted, or whatever in that process. So we did not want to continue to hand out, how many copies have we gone through or adjusted? 4 or 5 at this point?
No, at least, yeah.
We didn't want to hand out and then have them be updated, and somehow the wrong one is there and people are picking. We just wanted to have one document, and everybody can have that when that is done, hopefully in the next week.
Actually, it'll be part of the village board packet, which is, all of our village board packets are online. The entire packet, the same thing every board member gets is right there online. So,
And it'll be the same, it'll be on the Monday town board meeting, and that's all online as well, so.
but all the provisions that we've summarized are just laid out legally here. There's no surprises, it's all.
And I do hope you believe that we have taken this very seriously, this day.
I don't doubt that.
And we tried to think of everything that we could.
And we haven't always agreed.
No, we haven't.
Crying out loud.
No.
You know, you don't meet for 50 meetings at 2 hours a meeting for a year and a half and agree on everything. We hammered out a lot in trying to get to the point that we've gotten. And there's been constructive give and take, creating a positive spirit of like, you know what? This is something that we could actually do in this community on a more regular basis in working together.
I mean, I feel this and have known this, but I think that we've learned, we all have way more in common than just the name Waterford after the town or the village. We truly do. So I just think this is a great step forward. Is it perfect for both? No, but most agreements in life are not. Is marriage perfect? No. Shouldn't be saying that, but I'm just saying, like, every agreement, that's fine, that's why I said, that's why I said. But every agreement.
I have extra room.
It's the best for both communities at this juncture.
And the other thing, you know, you mentioned a little bit about forming a city. Well, that's part of the Joint Strategic Planning Committee, can be that, where, you know, they're gonna be meeting at least twice a year, they might meet a lot more. You know, to try and go to a city right now is probably too much on the plate. But 3-4 years from now, this committee can start doing it.
But we talked about it. We talked seriously
Yeah.
about it.
And let's get serious in these communities right now. Look at our issues: policing, fire, EMS. There's a broad range of issues that we're battling solo, but we're both dependent on each other for. So why in the hell are we not trying to do them together? It doesn't make any sense. So we in all transparency, we gave it one more kick around about a month ago, and we said, hey, do we burn this to the ground and start over and truly become a city and push that in front of the boards? And we decided at this point, to your point, this is the best for these two communities. And that committee, if they want to truly explore that, they can get serious about diving into that. And again, that probably will not fly, just with where people are.
That committee is a huge part of this going forward. So we all communicate more and we work together for more efficiencies, and it's non-binding, but it's a great step that all of us talked about to continue this into more efficiency, more things, but we gotta get to step 1 before you get to step 10.
Ed?
First of all, I wanna thank you guys. I know you guys put a lot of work in. I've been kinda monitoring on the sides, whatever, so I don't wanna take away anything. I also want to thank Adam for bringing up something that's dear to my heart. All the while you're putting those slides up, whatever, look to that banner by the clock and read it. Together we stand, together we fall, together we are winners, and winners take all. All of your slides, I've seen the word conflict, 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 conflict. And just as I brought up to Adam, what resolves all of these problems? Now, your work goes away or whatever, but I'll tell you, I'll be going on 26 years. I live in the township, all right? For 26 years, together we stand, whatever. Anybody ask, where are you from? Waterford. Waterford. Not once in 26 years did I ever say town of Waterford, village of Waterford. You know, Tom, you brought up that incorporation failed attempt. It only cost the town over $100,000, and they were told it was gonna fail, or had a slim chance. Even the DOA, Department of Administration, that calls the shot, yay or nay, that you're going to be incorporated. They said I joke with everybody, I said, these people know when you went to the bathroom. They knew everything about these two municipalities going forward. More than I've known in the last, 20 years or whenever they took that, made that study. But now, and as you mentioned, Adam, whatever, all of this conflict, all this other BS that's going on, you know, that's what I look at. I've been looking at this because years ago, I had an issue and it took me a lot, took me money, time, and I even got a statute changed, amended, and a lot of homeowners, new homeowners that build whatever, they got me to thank for this particular change. But I lost 5 years of my life working with the county, zoning. But anyways, got it to work, etc. After that lesson, I learned something, and it was called home rule. And I said, what is that? Applies to villages. I always thought villages were on the bottom rung, relative to power, say-so, whatever. Was I wrong when I read that? And the first thing I said was, if anybody says, let's take a vote to annex Waterford Village and Town Waterford, I'll be the first in line to vote for that. Now, we had that incorporation attempt, right? I spoke vehemently against it. What the heck changed my mind? I'm all for the at that time, I'm all for the village and all the benefits, but I was against that board or governing board that would have taken over. I thought, no, we need to change. So that's why I changed it. But I'll tell you, today, now, with all the crap, you know what's going on in the town. It's depressing, it's frustrating, it's aggravating, And now when somebody asks me where you're from, Village of Waterford. I'm not kidding. You know, Don, you know sometimes when I talked over at your meetings, I complimented the hell out of the village. And I got dissed on social media, like, wow, if you like it so much, why don't you move there? I'm like, I mean, we should all move there. But, I mean, I look at the benefits and all, I look at what the town does. I see, you know, 10 parking, I see kids in those little sprinkler systems and all in the summer times with mothers and other children. That's where all the money's going. Since 2020, I've already calculated, we spent, the town, $500,000 that got flushed down the toilet. Residents didn't see nothing. Predominantly lawyers' fees. And it's still going and it's still counting. So, when you brought up the city, I was like, oh, please. Because I was gonna say, what prevents us? And I know Doug said, oh, 3, 4, 5 years. We should have been talking about this 3, 4, 5 years ago. But what prevents us from, it's a big change, I know, there might be a little growing pains, but overall, I think it's the best, just like you made that comment. What prevents us with these upcoming elections in the springtime to put a referendum question on there, at least? Get the ball rolling. And before we do that, not just put the question out there, but I think we need people. The DOA will come and have, not so much, it'll be hearing sessions, because they'll tell you what it takes. They don't opinionate, you know that. They'll tell you what it takes, and then bring in some people that have no ulterior motives, nothing to gain financially, but there's been a lot of, well, they're cities now, that were towns or villages, that form cities, and get the feedback from them, and have listening sessions. Because I don't think we have to wait 4 or 5 years. I don't think we should, because I think the town's gonna implode for some reason. I got a gut feeling, big gut, it's been good to me. I don't see it getting better, it's on the downside. So thank you again, Adam, for bringing that up. You're a man after me heart.
Mike?
Appreciate it.
So I've been going to every listening session since this began, and, you know, the one new thing that I see is the 7-year island thing that was incorporated into this. Now, the way I understand it, you know, this has to be a continuous boundary for every municipality. It can't be an island. Now I see that there is a rule, incorporated into this that makes a 7-year, if there's an island created, 7 years to determine how it's gonna be decided. How does that come to be, I guess?
So, and you guys just chirp in anytime you want. This is something that's difficult to deal with, because this is actually, and if I'm wrong, correct me, these islands will be created by neighborly decisions. We cannot control who would want to annex in. So therefore, we cannot control where an island may form. So somewhere along the line, there had to be a mechanism, unfortunately, for the person that does become an island. And I think this, was there a state statute that was 5 years? Or is there not one for that? No, okay. So we went through the map. We spent a lot of hours looking at the map, who kind of almost playing, I don't know what you want to call it, I guess, chess with the map. On if this person did this or this person, who would be potentially an island? There are very few. Is that accurate? Okay. We also learned in the process that certain highways allow people to not become an island based on a county highway, state highway, what type of roads. So that eliminated a bunch that could potentially become islands. So you may have no islands, you may have a few. We decided that we had to come up with something that at some point those islands would have to come into the village if there was one created.
The state wants it resolved at some point.
Yes.
We felt that it was critical, if any town landowner found themselves in that situation, to give them time and a grace period and a significant amount of time to assess the pros and cons of their particular situation at that point in time and decide, what do they want to do? Are they okay coming into the village? Are they not okay? Do they want to move on? what do they wanna do? 7 years to decide that, if someone found themselves in that situation. We tried to be, again, as much focus as we could put on giving the landowner all of the options, giving the landowner the ability to determine what they want to do with their land based upon the situation, that we can't predict what's gonna be the case in 20 years, 30 years from now, but we're laying the groundwork to say, listen, 20 years or 30 years from now, landowner, you're still gonna have the option, because we're putting it down now.
So maybe neighborly was a weird way to say that, but it's kind of, that's what we came down to, is you kind of look at it, you're like, well, you know, or we don't know what this person would do or this person would do. These are neighbors. So maybe you have a relationship where you get to know your neighbor and you're talking to your neighbor, whatever, then you can kind of, you gauge what maybe where their mind's at. Because at that town, at the town owner meeting, I think you guys were there, right? We had pretty much the majority say, why the hell would I come into the village? I have no interest at that moment. But there was one woman who, she had a horse farm, and she's like, when in the hell are you gonna get this done so I can come into the village and get my money, because I want water? You know, so you have, I don't even know what property that is. I don't know where that is. Okay, so it's such a game of chess on who could come in and who cannot, so I don't know if that helps at all.
No, it answers the question. Yeah, I got a follow-up with indulgence here. You know, with this, agreement being put in place, when it's up to vote, you know, should land ownership within that boundary agreement, change ownership? Now, does that automatically get inherited into, the village, or?
No.
Or is it up to still the new property?
If, let's say it would be one of your children,
Right.
Sure.
if you're still in the town, they have that option to stay in the town.
Okay.
And I think I know where your property is. I don't see you having the option to become an island, if I'm correct, so.
No.
So I'm just saying, so they could
I'm
stay.
asking for.
Yep,
we
so,
understand, sorry.
but I mean, your children, your grandchildren, if you gave it to somebody else, they have the choices. They have the choice.
Do you have a question back there?
Just one comment, you're not questioning anybody's, lack of foresight or anything like that, but at the last public listening session, it was made very clear, as far as the boundary lines and stuff, it was made very clear that if you're not within those boundary lines of possible annexation, that, you know, for the next 50 years, my property is just outside one of the boundaries. And for the next 50 years, assuming that this passes, I can't go into the village. So, you know, I know that, you know, you can't possibly, you know, think of everything every time, but, you know, moving forward before the next public hearing, I think that should be made very clear to the people that are.
There is one option on your situation. If the town board allows it, it can happen in the future.
Okay, well, that's news too, so, okay.
If the town board says, yes, you can go ahead and annex at the time, whoever the board is or whatever, then it is allowed. But it has not.
Well,
The
and
village's
the
control is-
village would have to agree.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? I think everybody thinks the village just take whatever the hell's thrown at them. And that, as long as I'm on that board, everything's reviewed and looked at.
It's an application for annexation.
Yes.
Essentially, and the
It's
criteria
application,
has to be
exactly.
met for that to happen.
And
Yes.
truthfully, it's gotta make sense, at least that's.
And one of the criteria is the town board saying, yes, if the village says so, you can.
Okay, so, again, this is something that I'm just thinking of right now. If there's another, you know, high-end piece of property that the village is willing to accept into the village in the next 50 years, that is not part of this plan, so they could just do it anyhow?
No. The town board would have to approve it. The town board says, no, the boundary's the boundary, then that's the way it is.
And hopefully, when Tom brought up this joint committee, hopefully will address some of these issues. So if an owner like yourself was thinking about this, hopefully hopefully you talk to your town representatives, that's put on a list or for whenever the next meeting is to discuss this with the representatives from the village on that committee. So at least you know that there's this, people are talking about potentially doing some of these things, and there's planning. That's what this whole there's planning in this, is what we're trying to get at.
No, I do
So-
understand where you're coming from and whatever, but from my perspective, that is kind of concerning that we're saying that, in one breath, we're saying that, you know, the boundaries are the boundaries for the next 50 years, unless something changes.
Well, that's the difficult part, because whoever sits in those seats makes those decisions, unfortunately, if you would petition that. And we also ran into many people when they saw the first, draft of the map, why they weren't in the map. I mean, so we ran into a problem where you could potentially just keep going. You know, you do have, we did have to cut it at some spot that we all felt it was equitable to a new boundary.
You gotta draw a line somewhere.
Well, right.
Which is tough to do, because there might be people that want that option down the road.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion on that.
There was.
Oh, yeah.
I wanna just, Kevin, do we have anyone in the online meeting? No?
No.
Okay.
Can I just ask a clarification to his follow-up, because I wanna make sure I didn't misunderstand something. So, new ownership, because I know that was a word that you had used. Is that when I am under island of myself, and my neighbors have, let's just assume that today we're going into the boundary plan, and both of my neighbors decided to annex, and I am now an island unto myself.
Mm-hmm.
I get 7 years.
Yeah.
Or if tragically I die 2 days later, and my kids inherit the house, that's not considered new ownership, so they would not automatically be annexed into the village. But if they sell the property to this lady right here, sorry, then it is annexed into the village automatically.
It's defined as a title change.
If
So it
the
depends on
title
if you have a
changes,
trust or- I'm no attorney, but yeah, it depends on, if it's sitting in a trust, then it might not ever change. It's defined as a title change.
That's my question, thank you.
all right, other questions? Jim?
This 50-year agreement is agreed to by both the town and the village. And there's talk of the two communities combining again, becoming a city. Does that end the 50-year agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Process will go over again.
Yeah, it would have to be amended at that time to end it and become a city.
And there's a state process for doing that.
Again, it's all DOA's has to approve all that stuff, and it would have to be a vote from both boards approval.
Is that a unanimous vote on both boards, or is that a majority rules?
Majority.
Thank you.
Both municipalities have their monthly board meetings this
Next
upcoming
Monday.
Monday. Do either one see the boards voting at this upcoming, or will it be later?
It's on the agenda for discussion and possible action. So there should be a vote on Monday at the town level.
What was the question?
Is this gonna be on the agenda on the boards this month?
To vote
This.
on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the agenda for the village court also.
Thank you.
I foresee it happening unless unless some attorney finds something that's really weird and we have to have a special meeting. I shouldn't say that's the only, but that would be the big hiccup that I can see. But this was written by an attorney that does this all the time, that has quite a bit of knowledge of the DOA and how things are done and, all along. So we got pretty good confidence that it's done right.
I'll express a personal opinion. It would be ideal if the boards were voting at the same time. That would be preferable.
Yes, we have on the village end, I feel we've been very transparent on the timeline, to the sensitivity of their questions and concerns. This is the other trustees. They just received this document, in the last 48 hours. And we said if a week is not enough, you please let us know that, and we will try to do a meeting later. We do not wanna rush any vote. We wanna make sure trustees and the town board elected officials are confident in what they're reading and their concerns or questions have been answered. That is fair to everybody and the process. So yes, I think we all are on track for next week unless there is a hiccup.
But we have, and you guys can chime in, these things that we've been working on, that we've noted, if you look at our last planning session, it's the same ones. Okay, none of this is, it's not new. There was a few things that we had to tweak and as far as legally, but the major concepts, if you notice that map is dated, what?
June 7th.
June 7th, you know, it hasn't changed. So most of this is not, it's not something we're new and throwing to the boards. They've been to numerous meetings, questions, and everything, so. But if there is a hiccup or some major concern, I personally would have no problem having a special meeting. And we're not trying to rush at the end of the year, this is not Obamacare or nothing like that. This has been talked about for a long time, and this has been our goal, which we've set early in the year to get to this point. And if you don't set a goal, we could be talking about this sometime next year. So,
And as far as the town, the other supervisors did get this email to them yesterday. I did drop a hard copy off at Tim's house yesterday afternoon after our meeting. And I put one in Mr. Ulander's, box because he's out of the country right now. And I believe you gave it to Terry, so.
Yep, and our attorneys are reviewing, as we speak, so. We wanted them to have comments by noon on Monday, so.
All right, other thoughts, questions? Yes, ma'am.
So if this gets approved by both the town and the village boards, and then it goes to a public hearing, who makes the decision at the public hearing?
DOA.
The state will put on that whole process. They have 90 days after it is approved by both municipalities to either approve it or deny it. So that night, in that 90 days, that public hearing will happen somewhere in this area.
Yes.
And put on by them. And there's also, in that public hearing phase, not only is there the actual meeting, there is a period where people can write a letter, can email, can express their concerns or their praise or whatever they want in that form as well. But that's done by the state. We will be out of that at that time.
Thank you.
And actually, when we first called the DOA, they were surprised that we were actually talking, and they were very happy about that.
Yeah, you talk about the acrimony of years past and whatnot. We actually, I mean, this is a little bit of a look behind the curtain at this group's meeting, but when we met with the DOA, it was the same people that were involved in the mosh pit of the mess several years ago with the incorporation. And they basically told us repeatedly, I can't believe how well you guys are working together and getting along and driving this stuff forward. What happened over there? So, that was a little bit of motivation for us to keep going and pressing forward on what we're doing.
And just going back to the city comment, they did tell us at the DOA that is increasingly becoming the option across all of these boundary agreements, is that these communities are becoming one.
They use the word merger.
Yes, because of so many different things.
I've talked to them a lot, I try to gain as much knowledge of them, like I said, I come to the conclusion that going forward with all of this BS, it's the best thing.
And if this is approved, Ed, if this cooperative boundary plan is approved, it lays a track for us to get there if it makes sense for us to get there. Us, Waterford, the Waterford us.
The greater Waterford area.
So this lasts for 50 years, with the exception of, unless it's converted to a city.
Yes.
Yes.
All bets are off.
The big meteor hits.
And that'll resolve so many things going forward for our children and grandchildren. They don't get to grow up and listen to all this bickering between these two municipalities. Cause I call this thing here, this cooperative, this is a turf war is what it is right now. You know that, and it's like, we shouldn't even have to be sitting in on this, and just, you know, let's look at the long-term plan.
So one of the things that we've tried to do, this group has tried to do, Ed, from the very inception of our work together on this, because there are two main things that you're combating with this. Number one, town landowners think that they're being forced to do something. Not true. Number two, who wins? The village win or the town win? Town win, who loses? Who wins? Our position from the very first day that we met is we're not dealing with any of that. Waterford wins. We are holding Waterford's best interest in place with this. This is not about what does the town get out of it, what does the village get out of it, who wins and who loses. We have tried to craft something whereby which Waterford wins.
Yep, I think that is what this group has decided is most important.
All right, anything else? You guys have kept us, that's great. Great questions, great discussion. We really appreciate your time and attention and caring about this. And if you have further questions, that email address is up, it's monitored. We can, if you want the slides, we can send you the slides. This meeting has been recorded like the other ones were. We're gonna post it on YouTube so anyone can watch it on demand. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.